Welcome to the Oroville City Council meeting of March 2nd, 2021, regular meeting at 4 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll?
Councilmember Pittman.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Riggs.
Here.
Councilmember Hatley.
Here.
Councilmember Goodson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Mayor Reynolds.
Here. At this time, we will convene the closed session. Please turn off your microphones. Okay, we are reconvening to open session at 4:25 PM, where direction was given and no action was taken. I'm calling this meeting to order. So will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Sorry, I'm gonna get my thing on here. Salute, pledge. I pledge. With liberty and justice for all. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos. More out there, but I grabbed these ones.
At this time, we're going to open the meeting up for public communication.
Mr. Mayor, we received multiple written communication items, which I did email to you before the meeting. In addition to those, I have, if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand and I will call on you when I get to you. I have 2 speakers here. I have Kay Castro is our first speaker.
Yeah, that's Kay. Come on in, Kay.
How many speakers do you have, Madam Clerk?
For non-agenda items, I have 2 speakers.
2 speakers, okay.
Afternoon, Council, Mayor,
Hello?
everyone else. My name is Kay Castro, and I am a proud resident of this city. And I wanted to let everyone know that the Measure U meeting is scheduled for next week, March 9th, 6 o'clock. And their information is on the city website, and the Zoom number is on it as well. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bobby O'Reilly.
What meeting did she say? What meeting? She said it was on Zoom. I didn't catch what she said.
Mr. Mayor, this will be the last speaker on this item, as no one is raising their hand on.
Mayor Riley passes. He doesn't.
Oh, okay. Then that is the only speaker for non-agenda items.
Okay, well, at this time, we're going to close public communication of non-agenda items. Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a couple of changes to the consent calendar. Staff would request to pull item number 3 and pull that until the meeting on April 6th, 2021. We have a little bit of more research to do on that because of some recent case law change. And then a correction on item number 5, the Portland Lou item. The funding will come from the general fund capital projects account, not the capital improvement account, but nothing else changes. There is an approximate $3 million balance in that account.
Looking for a motion on the consent calendar, pulling item number 3 and a correction to item number 5.
Good.
Councilmember Hadley?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Could we pull 5 and 6, please?
Pulling 5, 3, correction on 5 with pulling it, and pulling 6.
I would move that we
Not 3.
3 being pulled at 4.
3, 5, and
5
6.
and 6.
Well, 5 and 6 have been pulled. So other consent calendar.
Oh, okay.
So that's with 1, 2, and 4?
Yes.
I second.
Okay, item number 3 will be, oh, sorry.
Motion
So,
carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Item 3 will be placed on a future agenda. Item number 5, Mr. Legron, you had the correction, but Councilmember Hatley, you asked for it to be pulled?
Yes, thank you. I just have a couple of questions on that. Now, these, how are they going to be, I mean, and this is just for my clarification, I need to know that we're not going to show up some morning and they're going to be laying on their side. How are they secured? And then who's going to, are they going to be locked up at night? Are they going to be, and then who's responsible for that? If that's the case, opening and closing and the cleaning and the, okay.
I'll start with the easy question. The first question, the cleaning. The city's going to be responsible for any cleaning that's necessary and supplying, stocking of toilet papers and things like that in these. These are specifically designed to be outside, so they will not be being locked at night. They are designed to limit the amount of damage that can be done to them and are particularly, I'm trying to find the politically correct way to say this, but they are, and please forgive me if this is inappropriate, but they're transient resistant, is what the design was. They actually came out of Portland where they were having problems with the unhoused population, sleeping in them and causing damage, so they're specifically designed for that. They will be placed onto a cement slab and connected directly to the sewer line, and so they will be bolted down with some sort of a red head or a bolt that's been embedded into the cement so that, no, you can't tip it over. They're going to be very heavy. Well, I imagine you could, but you'd have to unbolt it and go through quite a bit of work.
So these are attached to the sewer line then?
Yes, sir. They will feed
Okay.
right into the sewer.
Okay. Okay, that's, I was just trying to figure, and then the operation and maintenance of those will come out of,
That will come out of the regular operational budget of the Parks Department.
okay.
And there's just one more thing for clarity so everybody understands this item. There's 2 Portland loos. One will be at Bedrock Park, one will be at the Centennial Plaza. We are also contributing $100,000 to the Veterans Memorial for the bathroom to be built there because our original intent was to put a Portland loo there to provide another bathroom along the walking trail. However, after talking with county staff and with Supervisor Conley, a Portland loo doesn't fit the design of the Veterans Memorial. So they would prefer to have the dollars so that they can build what has actually been designed in the original plan. So that was, our intent was to spend approximately $100,000 on a restroom there. We figure it is just as efficient to have one that meets their goal and the aesthetics of that memorial as opposed to putting in the Portland loo. So that's what we're asking for permission to do.
And the one at Bedrock, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is the bathroom that's down there, what's the plans with that?
Well, what our intent for that bathroom at this point is we'll be bringing back some drawings to you to put out to bid. We'd like to convert that to, we're calling it a kiosk, but essentially what it would be is a building with a roll-up window with a retail area in it where somebody could run a business out of there where they rent kayaks or they rent bicycles and things like that. And so in order to get that out of the building, we needed to put the Portland loo in to move the restroom facilities. The problem that we're running into is that the old style of restrooms that are large inside are, unfortunately, they're becoming inhabited. So it's almost as though we have, our maturity has not kept up with that size of space. We have to have a smaller space to allow people to use the restroom. So that's why we didn't want to go back with building such a large restroom.
Oh, I believe it's a good idea. I just
Right.
had some questions just to
Yeah,
make sure.
no, I'm really glad you asked it because, that's one of the things, and I can tell you one of the weaknesses that I personally have is that I know a lot of things about what's going on, but I don't necessarily communicate them all the time all that well. So I do appreciate drawing out the questions because I think it's important for our community to know what exactly we are doing down there.
Okay. Yeah, so again, I'm not
Sure,
against it. I
no.
just wanted to ask. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Smith had some questions?
Yeah, so just real quick, service schedule.
I have no idea.
Okay, so that's yet to be determined.
It'll be into the regular rotation of how they do the other parks.
Because that will be adding, obviously, to the staff load, their responsibilities.
Right, but you know, if you see these Portland Loos, once they get put up, they have a very small footprint and they're open at the bottom. So I believe that the cleaning and maintenance that would be necessary to go on would be a very rapid cleaning, and they can effectively do it quickly. So I don't think it's gonna overburden our Parks Department, but it is gonna add a couple of extra stops on their trip.
Councilmember Goodson?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear, what was the change in the recommendation? What was the funding source?
The funding source, Councilperson Goodson, is going to be changed from where it says general fund capital improvement. It's going to be now general fund capital projects.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Pittman?
Thanks, sir. The bathroom that would be putting the 100,000 for the bathroom at the park center, and the county has a design. Would the county then be responsible for maintaining and operating?
Yes, sir. It would be the county's bathroom in the veterans facility.
Thank you.
Councilmember Riggs?
With the $100,000 to the county, is there a timeline associated with the build out of that restroom?
We wouldn't transfer the monies to the county until they were actually ready to build.
But is there a timeline that they have that would indicate when it might be completed?
I do not have a timeline from the county on where that's part of the project is. This has been a project that's been ran by the veterans and a volunteer group, and as they get monies available from different funding sources, they will build things. I think this will probably move the restroom project up sooner. But once we make notification to them that we have these dollars, we'd have a better idea of a timeline for you, which we could bring back at another meeting.
I'd like that, thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
Sorry to beat up the bathrooms, but to the county issue, do we have a commitment from them as far as keeping that open and maintained for the general public? Is there any like requirement that we're gonna?
No, we're not gonna be able.
100,000?
No, I really think it's gonna be difficult to go in and try to start laying down what the rules of that park is going to be. I think it'll be the traditional hours of a park from dusk to dawn and those types of things. And they are good stewards of their park. So I think you'll see something very similar to ours, but I will find out for you what exactly what their thoughts would be on that and bring that back to you too. I mean,
No more comments from the dais on item number 5. Do we have any comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not seeing any hands raised on item number 5. They'll check and see if there's any blue speaker cards for us. Mr. Mayor, there are no blue speaker cards on this item.
Having no comments from the public, I'm looking for a motion to adopt item number 5 of the consent calendar.
Go ahead.
So moved.
I second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Councilmember Hatley, you also pulled item number 6 of the consent calendar. Do you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you. When I'm looking through this, my concern, the first thing that pops up is that we're going to get complaints of favoritism by, they're gonna say, well, the supervisor likes me better than you, and whether, and I'm not saying that's true, I'm just saying that I have run across problems where people will, they're gonna say, well, I didn't get it and I should have had it, I worked just as hard. So that's where I have some concerns with doing this, to be honest with you. Just how can we get around that not get around it, but how can we address that to where that's not gonna be happening?
well, I think one of the things that we can do, Councilman Hatley, is that we would require the necessary documentation to support the move. It can't just be because I think you do superior work, you get 2 steps. I'm going to have to see, as the personnel officer for the city, I'm going to have to see a track record of superior performance over the year in order to get those extra steps that are out there. And I would remind all of my staff and myself, this is not going to be a regular thing that's done all the time. This is going to be something that's done for those that are performing at an extremely high level and have earned it. It's a tool in my toolbox. It's not the tool I use every day. So it is something, though, that we need, because one of the issues that we ran into is when we went to the second tier salary schedule, we went from having, I believe it was 8 steps, to now we have like 24, or, we almost have the entire alphabet now. So what's happening is we have people that are working in the same grade. Now, some have been here longer. But they'll get raises. One will get a 2.5% raise, another one will get a 5% raise. And that creates the feeling of disparity to when the work has been similar, or the person that's been here less time is doing a higher level of work than the person who's been here longer, yet the person who's been here longer, just because of the sake of being here longer, got a larger raise. So it is something that's been recognized by some of the supervisors. But I think in order to insulate ourselves from those issues, is that we're going to have superior documentation showing how you earned that, not just, I felt like giving it to you.
And as far as future, or how that impacts the budget, because, unless.
Sure. It would depend on the number of times that it was done over the course of a year. And I would say that it's not going to be done on a frequent basis. So what you're talking about is hypothetically a person, well, not hypothetically, somebody, instead of getting a 2.5% raise, they may get a 5% raise if they get 2 steps instead of 1 step. But now the same could, if you were a classic employee who had been here before PEPRA or the second tier, or hired before that, you could get a 10% raise. So it just depends on who it is, not who, but what position they're in and how many steps and how long they've been here. So it's hard to say what the impact would be, but it has to be done. We have to keep it within the budgetary constraints of our budget. We can't get wild.
And when would this take place? Would it start tomorrow? If we said yes today, would it start tomorrow? Or do we retro?
No, there's no.
just going to be a.
There would be no retro for this, and what we would have to do is, before this goes into effect, we're also going to have to meet and confer with the associations, because they're going to have the similar questions about how do you ensure that this don't happen? How do we know that, so we have to go through that process. So in reality, I think what you'll be seeing on something like this is you would see, if the council were to approve this, it probably go into effect somewhere around the first part of June, before we could get through all the necessary steps. And then that would allow us also, as we get into our budgeting part of our year, to budget for anything that we would see out there. And I would expect that any supervisors that were anticipating anything like this make Ruth aware of that, so that she can budget appropriately for that.
I have a question. Would you require evaluation reports from the supervisors on the employees that you could evaluate?
That I can evaluate?
Well, yeah, you have supervisors that have departments, and they're not just going to show up and say, hey, Pete's doing a heck of a job.
No, they need to have, from within their own department, they need to have the documentation of that. And merit increases occur only once per year. So it'd be on the anniversary or close to the anniversary of their employment with the city of Oroville where that would have to happen. And then the supervisor, the department head, would have to have the documentation from that person's supervisor to support that. The department head would then bring that forward, come and sit down with me as the personnel officer and say, hey, this is what I'd like to do, and these are the reasons why I would like to do that.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, merit increases are pretty common in the private sector. I haven't necessarily seen this in the public sector. Was there any review of precedents with other municipalities, government agencies? Sure. And if so, what was kind of the, what did you see with that?
Every public agency has merit increases. That's a very common thing. It's sometimes, though, it's referred to as steps. Sometimes it's referred to as scale, but it's the same process.
Yeah, I like empowerment of our supervisors to provide that. I think that's definitely a good tool to have in toolbox. Obviously, in private sector, it works extremely well, and I like it. But I just wanted to ask that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, are there any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not see anyone on Zoom wishing to speak. I'm not sure if there's any blue speaker cards on this item.
Chief's gonna get his exercise tonight.
Sorry. Mr. Mayor, there are no blue speaker cards on this item.
Having no comments from the public and no further comments from the dais, I'm looking for a motion to adopt item number 6 of the consent calendar.
So
So
moved.
moved.
I'll second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, we can't move on to public hearings till 5:15, so we're going to move on to regular business. Item number 8, self-contained breathing apparatus purchase.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This item is essentially the second phase of something that was started mid-2019. What happened there was all of the SCBA's, the breathing apparatuses for the City of Oroville Fire Department, were due to expire within 4 to 5 years, and they're expensive, and it's about $250,000 to replace them all. So I brought a staff report to council with a plan to do a 3-phase, 8, 8, and 8. We purchased the 8 in, I want to say it was June or July, or we got approval to purchase them, and I think it was July 2019, and it's been now I'm ready to do phase 2, another second round of 8, with the intention to, within 18 months, do the final and then have 24 new ones. Some of you might recall, or I know I've been asked by some about a grant. We did apply for a grant to purchase all of them. We did not receive said grant, so that we fell back on the original plan of the 3 phases, 8, 8, and 8, and this is just the second. Those will be 16 after this one. The cost there says not to exceed $78,772.40. That's actually the cost of the quote plus 10%. And I just put that in there. The actual quote's a little bit over. I think it was $71,600, something like that. I don't have the report in front of me. And that was only there in case there was a tax or a change between the time that if it gets approved tonight and the purchase. And that's the only reason that's there.
Okay, Councilmember Hatley wishes to speak.
Thank you. The money is coming out of Fund 153. How much is in that fund?
I can't answer that question. And looks like the finance director stepped out. I don't know the answer to that question right now.
Okay.
I did speak with Ruth, and actually I can answer a little bit of it, but not the direct question. And part of the answer is we budgeted for this when we did the budget. I don't know why, going back now, Ruth advised me that we budgeted $60,000, $60,000. I think the reason is because it was closer to $60,000 when we bought it a year and a half ago, but the prices have gone up. So we had a discussion a couple nights ago that we budgeted for $60,000 of it, and we had about $11,000 that we had to come up with. Because like I said, it says 78, but the real price is about 71,000. So we budgeted 60,000 when we did the budget, and we were a little bit over that or under that, and Ruth had told me that we would use that account to get that out of. So short answer, I don't know the amount that's exactly in there right now as we speak, but I do know that we budgeted for a good portion of this when we did the budget back in June.
This, I'm not trying to pick on you on
No,
that. but
that's fine.
Mr. Legrone can tell you I've asked this question every time. When it comes out of when I see a fund down there, I always like to know how much money's in the fund, and I ask that of everybody.
No problem.
When I see something like this.
I
So I was just trying to curious.
It actually reminded me, I'd forgot to mention the fact about the budgeting of it. I actually didn't remember that when I pushed the staff report through. Ruth called me and told me, hey, we budgeted for $60,000 for this. And I said, well, it's actually 71.6. So we had to find where we were gonna get that from, and that's where that fund came from.
Okay, thank you.
I think they're gonna try to get an answer for you.
But I don't want to use police, because it's not a police product. What they're looking for is what is the balance of the account?
We had budgeted, there's $38,000 after this expense left.
Councilman Hatley, to answer the question after speaking with our finance director, after this purchase is made, there will be $38,000 left in that account. It was specifically budgeted for last year, so there's approximately $128,000 available in that account.
Okay, thank you. That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone on Zoom wishing to speak on this. The city administrator will check the blue speaker cards.
There are no blue cards.
Having no speakers from the public and no more speakers from the dais, I'm looking for a motion to adopt item number 8 and authorize the purchase of 8 scuba and associated equipment in an amount not to exceed $78,772.40.
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Moving on to item number 9, comparative analysis of the Oroville Fire Department proposal and the CAL FIRE proposal.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you today for consideration, I hope you've had plenty of time to digest that and read it. It was a rather lengthy document. Just a real brief overview of it. On January 28th, 2021, we heard a proposal from CAL FIRE regarding providing fire service for the city of Oroville. On February 2, 2021, we received a report from the Oroville.
Excuse me, Mr. City Administrator, will you collect the blue cards, please? Yeah.
Oh, the ones that the white ones?
Those are filled out?
No, sir, those are blank.
Oh, nobody filled out a blue card on this item?
I believe our assistant clerk has
Oh,
3.
he has them. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I do have 3.
Okay, we're still listening to the presentation. Once we start an item, the blue cards are collected so we don't have circular conversation. So I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Continue, please.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, originally in September of 2019, a request for proposal was sent out for potential fire service providers for the city of Oroville. We received back that proposal on January 28th. We heard from CAL FIRE on February 2. We heard a fire growth plan from our Oroville Fire Department. Both of the options are very good proposals. I mean, the one put together by our local fire professionals is very well done, was very well presented. So after we heard both of those proposals, we were kind of left with, well, what do we do from here? I mean, so the council had tasked me with going back and trying to provide some sort of an analysis of the 2 options that were available. I thought it was important that everybody understand what our objective is here. Our objective is, and I'll just read what I wrote. It's to provide the proper level of service to the Oroville community by properly staffing, funding, and positioning emergency response equipment in the city of Oroville while remaining fiscally sustainable. That's our whole motivation for what we're doing with this project. So what I did is I went through and I highlighted the differences in the 2 proposals and the similarities in the 2 proposals. I prepared you a very lengthy report. The report includes levels of service. What is the level of service that CAL FIRE is going to provide? What is the level of service that Oroville Fire is going to provide? I'm trusting that you've read this, had an opportunity to digest it, and I'm not going to go line by line by line what things are in this. I'm trusting that has happened. What we moved on from there was a financial analysis of what I believed was the proper information that should be compared and what are our reasons that could push us in a different direction. I think one thing that was important that was brought to our attention is what is called the administrative fee for CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE has an administrative fee. It's fluctuated from about 11.6% to its current rate of 11.97% over the last 10 years. So it does move. So that is a moving target on that particular number. Important things for the council to keep in mind and to debate between yourselves and to figure out what is in the best interest of our community is our PERS unfunded liability that the current city currently has. With classic safety employees right now, we have about $16 million in unfunded liability with PERS. What that is that's the gap, the distance between what we owe and what people can be expected to receive after retirement. That is figured out by our actuarials and by PERS. That is a significant issue for the city. It's something that you have to take into consideration as we move our city forward. We have to remember accrual payout. That is one of your OPEB, which is your other public employment benefits or post-employment benefits. There are, right now, currently, we owe about $572,000 to our firefighters in other post-employment benefits. So that is one of the liabilities, too, you have to keep in mind. We also have other unfunded liabilities as far as sick leave and benefits as they move into the future. One of the things that I thought was important to bring to your attention was what is the current financial status of the city. It's a chart in the middle of the report. It shows what our liquidity, our debt burden, our general fund reserve, and our future pension costs, and our OPEB funds. You see, when you look at this, that our liquidity and our debt burden is pretty low at this point. It says low. Then all of our others, our pension funding, pension cost, pension obligation, revenue trends, and our general fund reserve, our risk is moderate. We get into our future pension costs and our OPEB funding, and our risk is high. So our overall risk right now is moderate. That is not me coming up with that. That is not me generating these assumptions or anything else. This comes from the California State Auditor's Office. It's available online. But I thought it was important that we keep that in mind. Changes that we make, changes that we do, changes these numbers. I mean, if we saddle ourselves with heavy burden of debt, then that's going to change your overall risk from a moderate to a high. I mean, and that will move all of these other numbers. So you just have to consider that as you make the decisions for the city. Now, I would tell the council that one of the biggest decisions that you will be making is, how we move forward on this. You have to balance quality of life and fiscal prudence. But that's something that I believe that you'll struggle with and debate with one another, but it is something to keep in mind. Retiree medical is something that we have to look at and we have to consider. Right now, what happens is sick leave can be converted into medical after retirement for our current staffing that we have. That has a cap on it and a certain value, so we have to look at that. If the council were to make the decision to explore the CAL FIRE option, medical after retirement is a vested entitlement for state employees. So in order to buy into that program for employees who have less than 20 years of service left, we would have to pay that difference. So this is one of the things that we would have to thoroughly explore and bring back to you before we were able to enter into some sort of a permanent agreement, because you need to know what that number is. This is one of the things that I would caution you and just remind you that can make this unfeasible. I mean, because if we get to this number and this number is $42 million or something ridiculous, then we just have to back away at that point. But it is something just to be aware of and to think about. We don't find those things out until we get further down the road or down through the process. And I would also remind everybody that that what is occurring is the council is considering proposals. There is no final agreement tonight. You're not putting your name on the line, agreeing to anything. This is going to be back before you a few more times for you if you choose to go that direction, or even if you choose to go with the Oroville growth plan, because there'll be multiple things that have to happen. This will keep coming back. Unfortunately, this isn't one of those topics that you just, it's one and it's done and you move on. You have to, to go through all of the necessary steps. I've also outlined our workers' compensation and general liability. There would be a resulting savings in doing that. And then I just outlined in the back of the report on page 96, page 7, the reasoning for retaining the fire department personnel and not contracting with CAL FIRE, and reasons for contracting with CAL FIRE. I provided no recommendation. I believe this is a policy decision of the council. I can provide you information. I can try to answer questions that you may have regarding what is in here, but I really believe this is a discussion that, as council members, you need to have. Staff is prepared to carry out whichever direction that is provided and come back to council as rapidly as possible with any updates or changes as necessary. So with that, I'm just going to kind of stand back, allow the council to have their debate with each other, and if need be, I can answer any questions that you may have to move us through this.
I'd like to take comments from the public first. You have speaker cards, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I will start with the blue speaker cards and then move over to the Zoom. My first blue speaker card is for Roxanne Eldridge.
Is that a double dip?
I don't know.
She's got her hand up on this screen here, so is she online or? Comes.
Roxanne, is this also you on here?
Yeah, because I,
Okay.
sorry, let me,
No worries. I just wanted to know if I could lower it. Thank you.
yeah. Let me pull it up because I'm going to read. Okay. Hi. In an article from 2015, Bill says that contracting with the sheriff's program would save the city money and that contracting with CAL FIRE would cost the city money. Quote, these increases revenues along with current levels of funding would allow the public safety department the growth it desperately needed, Legrone said. It potentially could add up to 16 police and fire staffs. If our population is growing, it is safe to say the revenue is too. So what has changed? I saw on the Chambers of Commerce meeting where it was pointed out that the costs in the presentation were not accurate and that there was displayed reoccurring costs with one-time costs. So I wanted to know, is the packet that we got that was online, is that the same that you guys have right now? It is? No costs have changed. So it's the exact same. And that's the one from the Chambers of Commerce, right? Same meeting? Okay. And then I don't know why we're not having an outside person come do this analysis, a comprehensive analysis, instead of someone who, no offense, but OPD, you know, you're gonna have naturally some kind of biased views here. So I think that we should have an outside analysis come in and go over that. And also, I'm kind of curious of where the Measure U money is. I did do a public records request on that, and it says online that you guys are supposed to do quarterly meetings, right? And then you guys haven't had one since 2020 of February. So I'm kind of curious where that's at, and if it's supposed to be readily available, how come my request was pushed out for 24 days? So I would like an outside analysis done. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pastor Steve Terry.
Kind of. Public safety. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, council. Whoops, let me turn this down. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know this is a real hot topic, real hot button topic, but I really want to stop a second and think. I'm wondering what our own fire department, what Chief Deal and Chief Tins could do if we would hand them the same $5.2 million. I have full confidence in them. I've been on many fires. I've been on many fires with CAL FIRE. This is not a good direction for us to go. I understand that there is the liability of CalPERS, but folks, that liability is going to be there no matter what we do. We say we don't want to pile on, but that liability is still going to be there. It's probably going to be there for the next, 100 years. I don't know the time frame on it, but that kind of tends to negate because it's still going to be there. And as I heard Bill say, the fact is there's going to be a medical liability as well down the road. But one question I want to ask, because I'm part of the committee, I find myself wondering, what will the Citizens Oversight Committee say of this? Because that 1% sales tax increase that was voted on by the public, part of what was said is we need to do this to save our department, because we had just gone through this already. We had just gone through the part where there was, let's get bids from Butte County Sheriff and let's get bids from Oroville Fire. And this was supposed to be about saving our department. Well, now here we are again. We've got the 1%. It's created a lot of money. I know there haven't been any Citizens Oversight Committee meetings, but as part of that, I know what I would say about it. I don't think this is good policy. We're talking about spending another $2 million plus. So when does it stop? Why don't we invest in our department?
Time is up.
Mr. Mayor, our last blue speaker card is for Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor, it's lovely to finally see you guys' smiling, lovely faces on the dais in the council chambers. I'm loving it. One step forward for progression. So a lot of my comments kind of echo Pastor Terry's comments. I have absolutely zero bad to say about CAL FIRE. I am a contracted firefighter, dozer operator with CAL FIRE. I work side by side with them every year fighting wildfires in the state of California. They're a wonderful agency to work beside. I know their safety is paramount. Their capabilities are paramount for wildfire, for the state as a whole. What we're talking about here is we're talking about our local citizens, our Oroville. We have a city department that is the second oldest in the state, that part of their probation is to learn where everything is in this city. You have to know where everything is in this city to pass your probationary period with Oroville Fire Department. CAL FIRE pulls it up on a GPS. Have any of you been down a back road with GPS, turn left here? Sometimes it don't work. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying our local guys know our city, they know our people. Most of them came from CAL FIRE for a reason. They were CAL FIRE employees. They decided to come to the city with less pay. They're not getting paid as much as they would if they were still on CAL FIRE, but they decided to come here for their benefit, for their family, because they're residents here, because they care, because they're citizens of this community. I've talked to almost every firefighter with the City of Oroville Fire Department. They care about this community. They want to be in.
Time's up.
And all they want is a chance. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the only hand raised on Zoom is Celia Hirschman. So Celia, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
I'm gonna put a video in too. Do you do video settings here? I don't know.
You can turn your video on if you would like.
I don't know how to do it with this particular setup.
Oh.
I'll just speak. I think that I understand why the city administrator raised this issue. It's his responsibility to provide the council with the best options. That is the greatest number of options that are fiscally responsible. But it's your responsibility as the city to maintain the nature of this community. And it's most important that you do. Otherwise, we'll be just like every other strip mall in California with anonymity. So the thing that makes Oroville unique is the fact that we do have a small town feel and we guard it carefully. And to me, that means you don't attempt to get rid of the fire department or the police department, because they are what makes, frankly, the city of Oroville a robust city. Otherwise, we wouldn't need all these people to run things. and it defines who we are. And so, and I don't even want to talk about the 1% tax, because we all bought into that so we could keep it exactly as it is now. And to do anything else seems to me very irresponsible. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the speaker cards and Zoom speakers that I have. Just to note again for you all, you also did receive multiple letters that I emailed to you before the meeting.
Okay, well, with that, we'll close the public comments and open it up to this dais if someone has anything to say on this item. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Am I on?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. My first comment, of course, is both presentations were equally detailed and certainly had a professional look to them. The OFD growth plan, I think, was a very impressive amount of work. I'd only seen a portion of it, and I've seen the entire thing. And I doubt we have too many other departments in the city that have done a growth plan for their own department. And they did it in-house. They didn't ask for a special study. They didn't ask for any consultant services. They did it themselves. So my compliments to that staff that had put that together. In fact, I would add to that growth plan was brought forward by staff. My next hope would be to see that growth plan actually produced and shared with the neighborhoods in this community to look at what would be the future of our community. Do we need 3 or 4 more, and I'm going to call them public safety stations, police fire stations in our neighborhoods? And I think the public should weigh in on that. The staff has made a great recommendation and has suggestions, and certainly none of it's cheap, it's expensive. But I would rather have the public weigh in and tell us what they perceive, what would be their ideal community that they want to live in. And that may be public safety stations, 2 or 3 or 4, I don't know. But at least that would be a beginning step, and I would hope that the council takes a policy direction to form a subcommittee or special effort or whatever the case may be, something along those lines to actually really take the growth plan, because you have the meat of a suggestion on how to deliver service in terms of location and desirability. I have to go back to compliment the leaders of the past, Mayor Buzz Roberts and Jenna Wilson in the late 70s and early 80s that made the decision to build a police fire facility. As it happens, they built it in the right spot. It's centrally located and delivers great service today. But that was in the 82 when that opened up. March of 82 was the first day in that facility. And now Oroville is growing. And we need to look at where should the other, and I'm going to call them neighborhood stations, be. We have the need to help with Elmadale. I would certainly suggest we work something out there. But that to me is a critical point in our community. One of the sad things, and I teach this issue, so I'm not going to be the instructor today, but I will share with you the sad fact of all these major incidents, very little is done with the fire department after the fire. And I go all the way back to the Oakland Hills fire. Less than 2,000 square acres, 3,000 structures destroyed 30 years ago. Less than 60% of those structures have been rebuilt. And the fire department received no changes in the fire service delivery in that community. I find that appalling. We need to sit down and learn and take lessons from the past. And in Oroville, we happen to have a few fair reminders. The wall fire, the China wall fire, the Bear fire, the North Complex. And now we have the campfire study. That's the entire study. And it only becomes our leadership and our stewards of our community to say, what can we learn from this and those other incidents to bring them forward to build a better public safety to our community? That's not easy. I'm throwing down a huge challenge to this council. If we sit down and actually go through and come up with a growth plan and a protection plan that includes both police and fire for our community, because at the end of the day, I'd like to be known as the council that provided the safest community possible. And what does that mean? I don't know. I can't answer that. It's not, you can't go to a shelf in the store and buy it. It's not available that way. So I hate to really compare numbers and services until we, or go down that path until we actually decide what should our growth plan be. That's my suggestion. And when I look at what's been done to most fire departments after a tragic event like that, very little is done. As an example, maybe we need to pick different ornamental shrubberies for our landscape plans and not plant the plants like a juniper that burns like gasoline. Those are little steps that may help our entire community, because the real fact is these large incidents, the communities are not recovering. Look at Santa Rosa, look at the car fire in Reading, look at all these incidents that are right in our backyard, right here in Oroville, the Potter's fire. And frankly, the North Complex fire should have been in the middle of this town, and what stopped it? Lake Oroville. Lake Oroville was our fuel break. So I'm just saying, at this point in time, we have enough things out there that should have scared us to a point where we need to sit down and really figure out what are we going to do in the future here. And I would propose that needs to be done before we move forward with any discussion. We've got to get our plan together. And I'll add one other immeasurable thing, that if we do move forward, of course, you're going to have to start having discussions and negotiations with your staff. If you look at the CAL FIRE proposal, because that's a change in working conditions, fair enough. I would ask, how many of you in this room are willing to work 20 hours more a week for the same pay? Because that's what we're going to be doing to our firefighters. We're going to ask them to work 20 hours more, go to a 72-hour work week, more than the 52 that they work today, and work for the same pay. That's not a negotiation I'd like to walk into, at least from my side of the table. The other things that are not measurable in this is, and Mr. O'Reilly touched it, the intimate and unique knowledge of the community. Fire service is the worst marketing business in the world. The fire department doesn't market anything. They don't tell their story worth a damn. And that's their fault. I was a part of it. I'll admit to it. But one good example is 2nd Avenue grocery fire down here on 2nd Street, or 2nd Avenue in Oroville. The bottom was a store. The 2nd floor and 3rd floor were apartments. It was an arson fire, spilled gasoline on the staircase, and we took 13 people out of that building by ladder because the staircases were all blocked. But one of the firefighters had been there 2 weeks before, had intimate knowledge of that building, and knew there was a 3rd staircase in the back that nobody else knew about except him, who had been there and rescued another occupant out of the attic apartment that nobody knew was even there. That's what we're talking about, unique and intimate knowledge of a community. That's what makes any local fire department very different. Same way in the local police department. The local police know their town, they know their territory. So that's, if we have to pick any policy, I like the idea that we're picking our own staff members to know our community. And at that point, I would say that if you know what my preference is, let's learn from the past. Here's another good lessons to be learned, as the campfire is a good example. That just came out last week. And there's a huge amount of information in there that we should learn from. And what's the old story? If you don't learn from the past, you're begging to repeat history. As an example, the Oakland Hills fire, how many of you are aware in here that that fire has occurred 3 times in the past? In 1920, the same place, same location, same fire. And they didn't learn from the past. So my suggestion at this point is, let's take the growth plan, let's learn from the past, let's move forward with some plan. I don't even know what it is. I can't pull it off the shelf and here's the magic bullet here. It's gonna take a lot of hard work, a lot of sit downs, maybe even hiring some kind of public consultant that can arrange public neighborhood meetings. I mean, we do it with every other thing, with our parks, we do it with our housing elements, all these other things. Why don't we do it with our fire department? My question. So anyway, that's my suggestion. We move forward with the growth plan. I even suggested not to Well, I just table the CAL FIRE contract for now and keep it on the table. Just that simple. That's all I had. Thank you for the time.
Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. It's no secret that our city council and members of our staff strongly boast of a revenue from the 1% sales tax measure. To date, we are steady and we are holding at a very handsome figure of approximately $6 million annually. This is not a trajectory, this is a fact. Even the challenge of COVID did not have a negative impact on the city's budget bottom line. The staff report for this agenda item, in the introduction, it clearly states that the city has not been able to provide the request from the Oroville Fire Department for additional personnel, for additional funding, and for additional equipment due to budget limitations. I would venture to say that that funding is now readily available to address what is lacking and what is needed in order for the Oroville Fire Department to run effectively, efficiently, expeditiously, and at an optimum level of performance. To date, I have not found nor spoken to one community resident, not one registered voter who voted for Measure U that thought that the money from the 1% sales tax revenue would go towards contracting the city's fire and protection services out to another entity, specifically CAL FIRE. What I do want to do is applaud the city staff for acknowledging that, quote unquote, despite these challenges, the challenges of funding, of personnel and equipment, that the men and women of the Oroville Fire Department, both in the past and in the present, have provided top quality professional service to the citizens of Oroville. Question. The staff gives a stellar report in regards to the OFD's personnel's exemplary and stellar service to our city. Herein lies the concern, and I would pose this question. Why would we not give our long-standing Oroville Fire Department that has been in operation since 1856 an opportunity to work their 5-year plan and provide them with the necessary equipment and personnel that they need to maintain and sustain our existing communities? In regards to the annexation of Thermalito, not only will there be a need for additional personnel, but a fire station as well. I believe that the city already has pre-existing buildings in the Oroville Business Park that can accommodate a fire station. And so I have a question to Deputy Chief Tins. If you will, please, sir. What are your thoughts on the city already having at their disposal pre-existing buildings in the airport area that would support an additional fire station?
There's one out there, I believe, that's a city-owned building that I'm aware of. I know that there's been talks of several different options out there. I know there's multiple options. I think that, we could look at, it would depend on what we really decided to do in that area. If that's the area that we wanted to put it, I would be happy with digging into that and seeing exactly what's available and seeing, presenting multiple options if that's something that you would like. But I do believe that there's a couple options. It would kind of depend on which way we wanted to go with that. I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you. I know that there was a figure that was in the staff report in regards to a new building, approximately, I think, $9,500,000. So thank you so very much for that. But in the event that there were no pre-existing city buildings, that could accommodate a fire station in that area or any other area. But I know that we're specifically looking at the Thermalito area due to city expansion. The U.S. Fire Administration oversees several grant programs for fire departments, one of which can pay for stations and others offer funding that intends to help build communities, community facilities, including fire stations. There are FEMA grants through the U.S. Fire Administration awards assistance to firefighters as a way to help fire departments reduce their response times and improve their quality overall. These grants, they range anywhere from 1.6 million on up to 15 million. Other assistance to firefighters grant funding can pay for equipment, training, and other basic expenses. I want to read a portion of a letter sent to the Oroville Mercury by a concerned citizen regarding CAL FIRE and Oroville Fire Department. And I quote, "The current budget would go up from over $3 million plus to over $5 million plus right off the bat. Make no illusions. When their union goes into MOU, labor negotiations, Oroville City, you will not be a part of it. Their union enters that with the state. The state in turn then tells whatever city or county, sorry, your bill just went up. Find out why other cities have entered into agreements, then got out of them. It is a whole lot more difficult to turn the clock back than to stay with what works." It is my understanding that the author of this letter to the editor speaks from a position of experience. So my last question, why would we sell out our hardworking firefighters who put their lives on the line every single day, both past and present, for 165 years? Oroville's fire department is the second oldest in California, and it is still standing. ROFD, they were asked to write a 5-year proposal, a growth plan. It is a good growth plan. It is a good proposal. I believe that they need to be given the opportunity to put their plan in motion with the full support and the full financial backing from the city and the community in which they so diligently and unconditionally serve. And now I'm going to change hats. I'm going to put on a minister hat. And for those of us that know this biblical scripture in John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And I believe that all OFD, I believe that all of our firefighters, all they're asking from each one of us is to allow them to do just this, and to do it not as employees of CAL FIRE, but as employees of the city of Oroville. Yes, thank you.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Good evening, everybody. This is definitely a, just like Pastor Terry said, is a very heated topic. I don't know how the vote's going to go tonight, but I want to speak from my heart and let everybody know how I make decisions and where I'm coming from. I was voted in as a city councilor, and with that, I communicated to the citizens my values, and I still stand by those values. One of my main concerns for this community is the citizens and their safety. And also, I want to say that I am positive there's nobody on this dais, or maybe I should say everybody on this dais supports OFD. So as they're chanting outside OFD, I'm right there with them. My concern, though, for our citizens is their safety. I think it keeps getting perverted in some of the comments that if this council chooses to go with CAL FIRE, that somehow the current firefighters will no longer be providing safety or fire support for our community, which is not correct. It's been clearly stated that if the city goes with CAL FIRE, the current firefighters who are local, who have that intimate knowledge of the city, will still be working in the city. The difference will not be who will be in the truck. The difference will be the patch on their arm, or who is the mid person that manages negotiations between this council and the firefighters themselves. And so, again, my main priorities are the citizens, the safety. What is the best? Nobody knows the future, but based on the information that we have today, what could possibly be the best decision for the safety of this community? How can we also continue to provide for our current firefighters? And for me, one of the biggest concerns is PERS. It is bankrupting cities across California. So at some point, we have to look at that, because I think as a government, I look at the United States and I see the continued level of debt that politicians make based on political aspirations, what's popular, and making decisions not considering the next generation, their children, their grandchildren. I mean, how much, I don't even know necessarily what the United States debt is that keeps getting kicked down the road to our grandkids, but at some point, as politicians, somebody's got to stand up and make an unpopular decision to make a decision based on what's best for my grandkids. 27 trillion? That's a few dollars. So anyway, that is a huge concern of mine, PERS. And so I like the idea of making a payment and not having to be concerned for my kids having to continue to make that payment or to pick up the tab. So that is a huge, that's huge for me. Second thing is, there's no easy decisions tonight. I support OFD. I'm here chanting. I don't know what's going to happen tonight, but there will probably be in either side, however this goes, people will be vilified. But I know from what I know with these council members, everyone here loves this community. Nobody here has stepped into this position because they had a bone to pick or trying to ruin the city. We all definitely want to provide safety for our citizens, provide firefighters, and also make decisions that are the best fiscal responsibility for the future of Oroville. So so this contract for CAL FIRE for me, honestly, is a very intriguing and very much appealing to me at this point.
Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. Well, my concern in this is that the firefighters will not be City of Oroville employees. They will be state employees, CAL FIRE employees. And to say that there's no guarantee that once they are state employees, where they're going to be assigned. You can put it in a contract, but if they decide that you're not going to list every person's name on that contract that says this is who's going to be here. And it was stated during the presentations that they will be moved around for training purposes, both ways. CAL FIRE will come into the city will be going to do, I guess, training in wildland fires. But there was going to be that cross-training thing. So the other thing that I have is that it was said that our employees would all be picked up. Well, I have to question that, because if I were going to take on personnel, I would want to know that those personnel were going to fit into my organization if I was going to pay the bill. So I don't know how anybody can guarantee that they're going to pick up every firefighter. And if that's not what they meant by that, then so be it. But I was under the impression that that was what was trying to be sold, that everybody was going to get picked up. And it may be the case, I don't know. But here's the other thing that I have. We haven't addressed, I know the city's trying to annex all of Thermalito. That's another, 6,000 people. Now, right now, they're being covered by CAL FIRE in Butte County, and so they have their fire protection there. But the minute the city annexes that, now they become city people, and that bill is going to have to be paid by us. And so they're going to have to come to us and say, you know what? In this original bill here, or this original proposal, we didn't count that. So how much more is that going to add to the bill? That's something I don't know, and that worries me, because they're going to, they could come and say, we need a new station. Well, you've got to provide that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because it'll be in the contract, well, from what the proposal was, that we would provide those things when they come to us and tell us they need them. So to me, when that Measure U money, and believe me, I thought it was I wanted it to be a specific tax, but it wasn't. It was a general, so it goes in the general fund. But the people were assured that their fire protection and police protection were going to be there. And the people that talked to me, the constituents, they were, and I thought it was too, that this was to keep our fire department, our police department, public safety, our City of Oroville Police and Fire. So now to do this, to take that money to offset the cost and to pay another entity to take over, that really and truly, we're not going to have a lot of say in it. They're going to tell us what the bill is, and we're going to have to pay it. We have no say in the negotiations as far as, what happens in Sacramento, as far as pay, benefits, and all that. And when they come to you and say, if you still want this level of service, this is what it costs. That's reasonable. I mean, if you own a business, that's what you're going to do. My level of cost went up, I'm going to pass it on to the consumer. That's business. And so to think this is going to be any different, I just can't see it. That's exactly, in my opinion, what's going to happen. So it concerns me when we continue to look at annexing things that we can't pay for. Apparently, because we're saying, this debt's gonna eat us alive. And to me, then we'd better stop what we're doing, because if we keep continuing to add to our bill, we are gonna deplete our revenue coming in. So, and that's not what we should be doing. We should take care of our own first and take the money, the $6 million that we're getting every year. I hear the figure coming in that's what we get, and put people in South Oroville Station if that's what we need to do, and do those things. And then stop trying to annex more if we can't do if we can't take care of what we have right at this minute. Certainly don't add more to your burden. You don't do that in your personal life, hopefully, and we shouldn't do it as a city. So to me, I support the Oroville Fire Department 110%, and I am not willing to budge on that. I think they should stay the Oroville Fire Department as is, and let's move forward and figure out a way to get this done. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing we know for sure, Oroville is not an island to itself. We have a lot of agencies that service our community. You mentioned the North Complex fire. In an ORAC meeting just recently, it was pointed out that state parks had a vegetation mitigation program, and it was attributed to that reduction, fuel reduction, that probably was why that fire did not come into downtown Oroville. So, you know, there again, partnership, you know, very important. I know in the summer during the Grand Fire, I personally observed CHP rescuing a bunch of housebound people one at a time, carrying them out of the house. I mean, it was a very moving moment for me, you know, brought tears to my eyes. But here were the CHP, you know, putting their lives on the line to save these people. And then CDF rolled in. And so, you know, as a community where we reside with all the various agencies, DWR, you know, we all know the potential threat, you know, looking at the reports that lake presents. You know, and then on, public safety for a very complex area. We have, of course, with the changing climate, and then I think the added challenges that exist with those issues. You know, 3 times in my memory this past year, Oroville was under threat of having to evacuate from wildfire encroaching into the urban area. So we have this urban wildland interface. That's a huge deal. And I don't think anyone can say we're fully prepared to tackle that today. And then I think, and I want to bring up the elephant in the room, and that is with service that's being rendered to us today by CAL FIRE. The entire northern portion of the city of Oroville, if I call 911, CAL FIRE shows up today. So it's not even a question to me, is CAL FIRE a part of that matrix of responders, first responders, and all of them are amazing people. I mean, going back to what Vice Mayor Thompson was saying, you know, I'm rooting for OFD. I mean, they're an important part of this community, and, you know, the history and all those things that go into it. But, you know, as we press on to the future, there are new challenges that our community faces, and we have to be ready and equipped to make adjustments to deal with those. You know, you pointed out, I think eloquently, Councilman Pittman, about what happened with the Oakland Hills fire back in the 80s, and the fact that, you know, fire happened, fire done, and we move on, and nothing materially changes how we do business in the fire industry or public safety industry. And so here we are as a council faced with complex issues. And then the additional elephant in the room with CAL FIRE is, if I understand it right, as I read the CAL FIRE report, they're providing somewhere 800 to 1,200 calls of service for North Oroville today, in the city limits today. And we are not paying for that. That's the elephant. Nobody wants to talk about that because, oh my God, what happens? What happens? What if? It's like Chief Messina pointed out, you know, the $48,000 bill to handle the Grand Fire that I was just talking about with CHP and CDF. Show, you know, the cavalry rolls in, again, to assist our firefighters that are doing an amazing job. But we've essentially tasked them with almost an impossible job based on what we've given them right now with the equipment, the training. I mean, when I look at the report that was done by Chief Tins, I'm like, oh my goodness, we got a lot of work to do. There are a lot of concerns in the public safety sector that we have to grapple. And then bringing El Medeo into this now conversation, which wasn't a part of that conversation when this whole thing got underway. And so now in the south portion of the city, again, we have El Medeo, who is a special fire district. They provide fire service in the city that is independent of this council or the city's overview. We have no essential say in that fire service, and then extends into the county. So then now you have an additional set of complexities with cost, coverage, and given the decision that was made by El Medeo's Fire Board to suspend service, we, the city, have now picked that up with overtime. We're ensuring that public safety is carrying on in cooperation with CAL FIRE. If I understand it, they're doing the county part, we're doing the city part. And so again, it's complex. One of the concerns that I personally have, and I mentioned it at the other council meeting was preserving those relationships. You know, as I listened to the horns honking and the passion that's being expressed out there, that, you know, at the end of the day, relationships and having a cohesive community that works together and, you know, loves one another, you know, pointing out with, you know, no greater love than this, than a man lays down his life for, right, for his friend, for someone else. And so just given the complexities, the responsibility, the need for even deeper levels of service when it comes to emergency services, public safety, this conversation, I think, is far from over. And we need to continue to move on and to continue to have these conversations, because Oroville deserves more. Oroville deserves all the safety and protection that we can muster. And so we have to find a path that that meets those needs. And I think of community standards. Just to digress for a moment, and community culture. We have community standards, community culture. I know that several years ago, a consulting service was hired, SCI, to carve a path out for the potential for cannabis. We spent $100,000 at the end. Nothing came of that, because community standards were such and set that, you know, that's not the kind of community that we want to be identified as. And again, I think this issue, is this a community standard issue? Is this a community culture issue? I think that the horns honking outside are indicative of it's a community culture. And that, I think that's the concern. If this were to happen and CAL FIRE were to come in and assume the role of HR services and absorb our current firefighters, can that culture, the hometown feel, the history and all of that, can that be preserved? Now, we've been assured by Chief Messina that that is a possibility. There's a lot of questions. You know, is that in fact true? What has happened to other communities when like ventures have been initiated, and then what has been the outcome of that? I frankly don't have the answers to that. I did call Mayor Steve up at Paradise. They have, of course, CAL FIRE Service, Biggs, Gridley, likewise. And there was a, you know, kind of a yes and amen, if you will. They're happy with that. They feel that it preserves the culture in the community, and it's worked well for them. But you know, will that work for Oroville? You know, I think that question is yet to be answered as we move forward with this. But I think we do certainly have a lot to consider, a lot to grapple with. But I think we need to move forward. And perhaps even having kind of some multiple things moving simultaneously as we think about making a final decision. Because tonight's not a final decision on this by any stretch, whatever we do. But as we move forward with this, however it evolves, this we do know, that we love our city, we love our town, we love the culture, the community, and we are taking head on, though difficult as it is, the changing climate that we're all faced with. I mean, you know, one thing that we can be assured of is change, right? Change is hard, but growth demands it. And so I just want to try to back up and not be so with the sense that, you know, somehow we're throwing Oroville Fire under the bus or disrespecting them. I think on the contrary, they deserve so much more. And they deserve all the assistance and help that we can afford them as a city council, whatever at the end of the day that looks like. And it may not meet everybody's exact taste or desire, but we owe it to the community, we owe it to them to get the job done. And I have more comments, but I'll stop at this point.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds. I too have spoken with many of our current and retired fire department members, and went into this conversation feeling very defensive of our local fire department, and feeling very much protective of them. I think that where Where some things started to crack through for me is that it seems that over the past several years, the fire department has been handicapped in their ability to implement the change and the growth that needed to occur congruent with the growth of our community. And of course, that is primarily due to budget concerns. I also want to thank you, Councilmember Smith, for addressing the imbalance of our reliance on CAL FIRE. It is absolutely unreasonable for us to assume that CAL FIRE will continue to respond over 1,000 times to our mutual aid requests, and for us to not be able to reciprocate that. Not only is it unfair to that entity and to those residents, it's also, in my perspective, embarrassing for our community. The other things that I do very much value about this possibility for a CAL FIRE contract is the side of prevention, especially with the amount of evacuations that we've had even in our downtown areas. The fire prevention side of CAL FIRE is quite robust. The backfill of engines and the centralized command and control in high-risk situations is very valuable to me, specifically because I know that having central control is very important to responding quickly. And in these types of environments, in fire situations and emergencies, we need that unified direction. And I also believe that that unified training is a value. I also appreciate the depth of resources that CAL FIRE has, that on our own, we would not be able to reasonably achieve. Our city department is not going to get a retardant plane. It's just not going to happen. And so that is another thing to me that is very valuable about this possibility. Yes, those things are available to us through mutual aid requests, but it is also putting us at risk because it is unreasonable to assume that CAL FIRE at any given time won't say, hey, we're putting in way more than we can reasonably be expected to do. So on that, I will say that our men and women at the Oroville Fire Department are top-notch. I am so relieved that if this were to go through, they would retain employment, however, with CAL FIRE, and that would give them a significant pay raise. I do have a few specific questions. One of them is what percent of our 911 calls are police compared to fire? I know that there's some concern I have some concern regarding dispatch, all moving over to the CAL FIRE side and that possibly slowing down our police response time. And then I would also, if we move forward with CAL FIRE, I would also want to reiterate the significance and the need for training on a localized level with our local buildings and unique environment. And then lastly, I would also like to echo what Councilmember Smith said regarding it's possible for us to say, yes, let's continue investing in and looking at this CAL FIRE contract, and at that same time have outside evaluators do further analysis in order to weigh the pros and cons of doing such a contract. So I really appreciate the effort that Bill Legrone, the city administrator, put into creating a comprehensive analysis. I think that that is a great foundation, and I applaud the dedication that you had towards that. But I do believe that further analysis, whether that be through pursuing the contract or while also pursuing the contract, would be really valuable. That's all.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, Councilperson Briggs, to answer your one question regarding dispatch, it would have no effect on police. All calls for 911 come into the police PSAP, and then if it's a fire call, it would be transferred to fire.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Hatley reminded me of a couple comments, and one of his is about, let's just say, example, when I talk about a growth plan, you look at Thermalito. For years, as I was in the profession, we always talked about having a fire station at the Oroville Airport because the city owns the land, and that seemed to be a simple, cost savings factor. But what I'm talking about is let's get out from underneath our elected prima donna positions here and deciding what's good for the community and ask the people in Thermalito where they want a fire station. That's what I'm talking about here. Let's ask them where they want a police and fire station or whatever. It may be at 10th and Grand. It may be on Nelson Avenue. I don't know, but the public should obviously weigh in on this, especially if we're got a pending annexation of that group of people out there. They should give us the information. Now, I know we don't have a blank checkbook, but if they tell us where they'd like to see a police fire station, then that's our goal. That would be our goal. We simply say the airport because we own the facility, we own the land. Well, okay, that may not be the best location for it, especially when you look at Thermalito. We're at a mixture point. And then, yes, you've got to work the deal with, actually, it's the County of Butte Fire. It's not CAL FIRE. It's the County of Butte that owns that fire station. So we'd be dealing with the County of Butte, and we can, obviously, there's issues to work out because their station is there. It was there before we started, and so on and so forth. But the same thing, I look at East Oroville. Where does East Oroville want a fire station? Do they want it on Olive Highway? Do they want it on Foothill Boulevard? Where should that be? The staff has made a great recommendation based upon the numbers of calls and those kind of things, but I say one step further, let's go out to the public and ask them what they want. That's a different idea. Not many fire services have done that. And I would say at this point, the city of Oroville needs to do that because I'm not in a position, I would vote for this one way or the other until the public tells me where they want their police fire stations or their service level to be. Talking about the pool, the PERS pool, we will have a PERS pool payment forever.
Forever.
It doesn't go away. And I would rather pay a PERS pool payment for people that are working for us than people that we don't even know. Because in the CAL FIRE contract, we'll be paying in that PERS pool for 25, 30, 50 years. And none of those people will be working for us. They'll be in the CAL FIRE employment. That's what we pay. So I'd rather pay that PERS pool to people that are working for us. And it's a good point you bring up about the aircraft and all that, but there's a policy. CAL FIRE is a state agency that we all pay for. And if there's an active fire out of control, they will provide all the aircraft and the wildland resources necessary until that fire is under control. We have never paid for aircraft in 40 years that I know of, and we've used them many, many times. The only issue is if you declare it under control, then you have to start paying for that aircraft time. So there's ways to get around that particular issue. Let's not forget, the state of California, CAL FIRE, is all paid by us. They're our agency. It's not a different world. It's not a different business. So let's be careful about where we're spending money and where we're perceiving to tell our public. It's a good point, but you got to understand the system. And like I said, the fire service does a terrible job marketing itself. We do an absolute awful job explaining what we do. And it is entirely complex. The descriptions of the terms and terminology, hell, it even confuses me because they keep changing them. Automatic aid, mutual aid, all these kind of things. When I was on the job, we had a huge fire in Oroville. Started from the Oroville airport, ran across the river, and landed in the cogeneration plant. Lasted 3 days. We didn't have anybody to provide resources for our community. And I had to ask for a mutual aid strike team and it came out of Yuba City. They came up and provided coverage for our community for 24 hours. That's a done deal. All you have to do is make the phone call. Because none of the resources, as you mentioned, were available. We had even the CAL FIRE resources were all committed to that fire. 3 days worth. Huge event. The system is there. The system is already in place to provide resources. I'll also tell you that no fire department in California can stand on its own. And there's plenty of examples of that. So we have a perception that we believe we can, but the reality is that's not real. Look at this report here. They did everything they could have done. But what I'm saying is, let's take our growth plan, let's sit down and take the best of this and learn from the past and apply it to the future for this community. Across the board, police and fire, both. I think fire is a big question that can be worked on. And let's go to our neighborhoods and let them tell us where they'd like to see that fire station, police station, whatever the case may be. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to bring us back to how we got started with this, and it revolved around fiscal responsibility. And now it's kind of evolved into our awareness of other issues that have come to light with the public safety factors that I think have been well expressed here. Back to fiscal responsibility. I believe that some of the challenges that are set before us and even our children are going to be saddled with really even can come into our sustainability even as a nation with external threats. When I look at the national debt, every man, woman, and child, every person, if you will, right now that debt is $85,000 each of us today at the $27+ trillion of national debt. California's unfunded liabilities, by some estimates, is $1.5 trillion, to the tune of about $37,000 of debt for every person that lives in the state of California. So this is a national security issue, in my opinion, but we're not congresspersons, we're not senators, we're not at that level. But I do believe it does begin at the grassroots. It does start with community by community becoming fiscally responsible. When I think about those that started our city and then on it as it evolved, and we had amazing packages. In fact, with CalPERS, you have the legacy plan, or it's the original plan. Essentially, when you look at it, it's an unsustainable model. You cannot provide that level of a package. This might offend some, but it's almost a Ponzi scheme. Almost. I've heard some refer to it in the financial area, because it's a pyramid and you got to keep stuff coming underneath. And that's why we switched over to the PEPRA, right? Because we want to be fiscally responsible, have a sustaining model. Initially when this whole concept came to me, and part of the deal was to make sure that our OFD get a great deal of segueing into a large organization with upward mobility, which is really important. I mean, I'm thinking, man, if I'm a young firefighter and I want opportunity, that's pretty cool. And then, potentially for greater pay, and then also to have, once I retire, a permanency for medical services. That's pretty good stuff, pretty good deal. So as a council person, I was thinking, man, who would want to pass that up? And then, of course, the small town feel and the all the culture and all of that kind of came into view, and I appreciate all that, and we all want that. But at the same time, again, from the business side, the business sector, I think, again, how do we get here? Fiscal responsibility, which comes back to consulting, comes back to, and I think that our city manager has pointed out, this at the end may not even be something we can do when it comes to the cost, when it comes to that piece with the firefighters' retirement package on the CAL FIRE side. I think it would be irresponsible. It's a harsh word, but I think it potentially would be irresponsible if we don't help the city with assistance in digging in and really examining thoroughly this topic. I just think it deserves a deep dive to ensure that, at the end of the day, I don't think any person can say unequivocally, this is absolutely 100%, signed, sealed, delivered, no questions asked. Because there are outliers, like what was expressed. What's that look like in year 15, year 20? I don't know. Does anyone really know? And so I'm good with going forward, but with caution and with ensuring that our city has the appropriate tools to do the analysis that gives us the best information possible to make an informed decision. I just wanted to add that the context here, the fiscal responsibility is what got us here, and now we've unpacked this thing and are like, oh my goodness, now what? So, anyway.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds. I just wanted to respond to a few things that Councilmember Pittman said. First, that I do understand the systems. I do have a master's degree in public administration, which is managing local governments. So to assume that because I'm new, that I don't understand the systems, I do. What I'm saying is that it's irresponsible of that agency to continue to bear that burden because the Oroville city isn't covering for their community in the way that we should be. When asked, the Oroville Fire Department, when we were asking them what level of service are we meeting right now, our goal is a 90% response time within 5 minutes, and currently we're meeting that 37% of the time. And so although I know that there are many things that go into that, I am not willing to continue to say that 37% is appropriate or fair to our citizens. It isn't. And so although I am leaning one direction towards this decision, what's most valuable to me is the amount of review and analysis that continues to occur as outlined in the contract. And so in saying that, there's no saying that throughout the process there might not be a red flag that absolutely makes us turn the other direction, and I'm continuing to be open to that. But I will say that shutting the door on it so soon when we aren't currently meeting our service standards would, to me, be not wise.
Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I just wanted clarification from either Chief Joe Dill or Deputy Chief Joe Timms in regards to the 37% that was just mentioned. Can we get clarification on that?
Yeah, so
Speaker's not, oh, there he goes, okay.
Oh, sorry about that. If you remember, I showed the map of the kind of the spider web effect of the city and kind of how that border lays out. The time that I gave was total city coverage. We exceed that for a strong majority of our calls because of the core area of the downtown. Not most of our calls are down there, so we exceed the 5 minutes or less for the majority of our calls. It's the growth of the city as it expands. We're not expanding with that growth as it goes out. And we kind of gave a definition of it would be ideal if it was a perfect circle and all the roads just kind of led, but that's just not the case. So the only way to meet that throughout the city, regardless of who does the protection, you have to move resources throughout your city that can respond to those areas faster. So I hope that answers your question.
So what I believe I heard you say was that your response time equates to the same as CAL FIRE for the majority of the time. It's just those sporadic areas
I'm not
that
sure.
are far-reaching.
I'm not
where-
exactly sure what their response times are. They typically have a station per community. Palermo has one, Kelly Ridge has one, and that is a first due area for that. I'm not sure what their response times are, but we hit most of our calls in 5 minutes or less.
In
for
5
sure.
minutes or less, the majority of your calls.
Oh, yeah, I don't have exact numbers, but if I had the map in front of me, it had all the dots on it, and you could see the 5 minute outline around that, and we hit most of our calls in 5 minutes or less. It's just the geographic
outlying
area of the
areas.
city limits us from doing that from one central location.
All right, thank you
So,
very
yeah.
much.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and speak. I think I have to be very careful because I seem to offend somebody with whatever I say. But I will start out with Oroville Fire Department has my utmost respect and all of my support. I've never questioned their service, their integrity, nothing. It's not a question of service. It's a question of what can we provide for the city. The city is not the same little hometown that it was just a couple of short years ago, because our population grew by over 4,000 in one night. It's impossible to grow with that. But I just want to get that out there that I went down and I spoke to the firefighters. We had a good conversation. They had some good questions. I answered them. It was a good conversation. And I will tell you that on an individual basis, the attitude or attitude's a negative word. I want to say the perception of this proposal is a lot different when you're speaking one-on-one than it is when you're in a group. And I want to be clear, because when this sustainability, and I will say that this council of the last 2 years has done an excellent job. Not to denigrate anyone before that, but I will tell you that this town was in a really bad position, and now it's in a good position. And with this council, we have made excellent decisions that have moved this city forward. How can we have everyone's trust on everything so far, and then one thing comes up that is very emotionally driven by those involved? All of us have a family member, or we work there, or we know somebody who did. So it becomes very emotional. And in my opinion, we can't operate off of emotion. We were elected to make the hard decisions. I didn't stand up there giving my campaign speeches going, if something tough comes up, I'm going to hire a consultant and let them make the decisions for our town. I didn't do that. I don't think anyone here did. I think that everyone stood up and said, trust me, I'm the one for you. I'll do a good job. I'll look out for you. And I think that we've done that. I think that this council's made some leaps and strides that are they're really headed in a good direction. We have excellent relationships with nearly every entity, and the reason why I'm saying nearly, it's everyone I can think of, but I'm just going to say nearly because I guarantee you somebody will come up with some angle that I was telling a lie. So I'm going to say that nearly every entity is operating with each other now. We're back to working together. I'm telling you, the division is a killer. So many of these things could have been answered with a simple phone call. And I'm going to say that once again. I've said it for over 2 years now. Please call. I know that certain activists in this area, which is funny because a lot of the activists that are the loudest don't even live in this town. And but I'm thankful that they care so much about us that they're willing to claim us as their own. Bless their hearts. But I will tell you that the information put out there, let's see, we have a petition here. They already took El Madeo from us, and now they want to take our Oroville Fire. What is that? What are we, I don't get it. The negotiations, and I'll tell you who was on the committee, me and Councilmember Pittman, when we approached the idea with the CAL FIRE proposal. Because we know, and Dave, this is his life. He was fire chief. He's in it heart and soul, and I have the utmost respect for him. I would never question him or his decision or his outlook. But on this issue, I think we're probably going to take different positions. But that doesn't mean that I don't have respect for him and I don't value everything that he has to say. Just because we might have a different idea or a different perspective doesn't mean we hate the other side. I don't hate anyone. I want everyone to succeed. I want everyone to work together. And I'll tell you what, getting back to the activists, they were reached out to and said, hey, you have questions. I see that some of your information is not accurate. Would you like to come down and meet with us and go over it? Zero response. No response. So that tells a story to me. Why not want to get something cleared up with facts? So anyway, I've heard a couple of points brought up where worried about people being transferred out to train. 176 Nelson Avenue is the Northern California Training Center for CAL FIRE. So that's where they get their training done. Nobody has to pack up and move. And when we sat down with our negotiations or our, I don't want to call them demands, our requests, strong requests, we did that with the wisdom and knowledge of a former fire chief that lived his life through fire. So these are the requests. These are the stipulations that we put on this proposal. And even speaking to one of the leaders at the fire department, he said, no, that can't happen. And I said, is there any way in your mind, this was a private conversation with he and I, is there any way in your mind that you can see this happening? Is there any possibility? And he said, yeah, if it was in the agreement in black and white. I said, okay, page 1. What? Hadn't even read it. Unbelievable, he said. That is amazing. He said, I got to tell you, in private, I'm going to tell you that that's the best contract I've ever seen. But in public, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say that I didn't say that. And that's fine with me because I understand the brotherhood and the looking out for one another. These letters from the union, you can request, any union member can call up in another town with the union rep and say, hey, we want a letter of denial. Issue that to us. And they will. They look out for each other. I was in the union. I know how unions work. And in military and police and fire, because you're not just working together, you're putting each other's lives in each other's hands. So there's a bond there, a dedication, a loyalty that a lot of other people don't get to enjoy. So I understand that. But in asking for the proposal, there was a lot of wisdom and thought for these individuals that went in. Keeping the Oroville Fire Department name was one of them. That was, we keep our charter. That's not even in question. These employees stay right where they're at. Otherwise, the conversation wouldn't have gotten to the next item. So just to, once again, clear up any misinformation or misleading or misunderstanding. I don't know. At this point, it's hard to believe that anyone misunderstands the information. I just want you to know that when I ran for office, it was to represent the whole community, everyone, and look out for the betterment of the community. That doesn't mean, I have like a lot of us have kids, and I'm not comparing anyone to kids. I'm just saying that there's a position of authority where you have to make decisions. And, having multiple children, one might get, it's the birthday, the one might get the bicycle, the other one don't get it right then. These decisions have to be made. We can't just do whatever makes us feel good. That's what this program was when it was created. This was let us get ours, and they'll handle it down the road. Not my problem. Well, guess what? Somebody has to say, hey, we have to handle this before we're once again circling the bowl of bankruptcy. This design, although good for the ones that were in on the ground floor, I understand the Ponzi scheme reference. This is what I call a program to fail. Well, guess what? We're reaching the failure point. So why do we have to be flat broke and begging for grants before we say we have to plan ahead? We're not entering into bankruptcy a year from now, 2 years from now, but I'll tell you what, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, the people are going to be looking at this and said, man, they had a chance to fix it. It was $16 million. Now it's $160 million. So I'm sorry if that leads to some people being upset if they're basing their feelings or their decisions on emotions, or if they just want what they want. I don't know. I'm sure there's a little bit of difference in quite a few people. But the reality of it is you elected us. You elected us to make the decisions. When that marijuana consultant was hired at $25,000, I laughed. I was sitting in that audience. I wasn't a member of this council. I said, shh, that's a down payment. And what did it turn out to be? $100,000 before they finally cut him off. And I'll tell you what, the same thing would be here. So you know what, we were elected to make these decisions, and pay attention to your campaign speeches, because when you're up there making them promises, they mean something to some of us, and we have to live up to them. So don't get caught up in the hype. Nobody hates anyone. No one thinks that anyone is doing a bad job. Chief Ten's absolutely stellar. You and I are friends. We are not. I'm not trying to run anybody down or run them out of a job or run them out of town or any of this stuff. We're simply trying to look out for the whole community. So please understand my decision. And I'm going to, I don't know if this is based on this decision. I think that most people know that I had COVID a few weeks ago. My wife had it too. My wife was very sick. And the things from, and I'll say the other side, the other ideology in politics, the comments on their Facebook pages of, I hope he dies, I hope his family dies. My goodness, what is going on? Have we come that far where that's what it is? Over an issue where we're trying to get the best service for the community, you hope my family dies? Shame on you. I'm embarrassed for you. But anyway, getting back to this, you're right. Absolutely, it is a fiscal responsibility. Councilmember Smith, I think that we need to focus on that, take the emotions out of it, take the, these guys know this building, they know that street. It's the same people. We're not telling everybody to get their stuff and get out of the building, and we're bringing in guys from Crescent City or something. It's the same people. Those same people will know that back stairway and that back alley and wherever this address is. The same people. Anyway. Councilmember Pittman, please.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. My job up here as elected officials to look at the numbers and look at the service provision and the level of service. And I've looked at the numbers, and I'm going to have to ask the rest of this council, the question when you walk out of this room is, you're going to be asked, why spend $1.232,000 for the same level of service we got today? That's your question you're going to get. Because the administrative charge is far more than what we cost the city right now. We pay about 6% administrative cost, and you're going to go to almost 12%. For what? And you have no guarantees on where people sit. As Councilman Hatley said, they're state employees. They go anywhere they will. There's no guarantee they'll stay here in this community. So with that, I would like to make a motion that we ask the city administrator to come back to us with some proposals or agencies that might help us with putting the growth plan together and facilitating the neighborhood reach outs. Some consultant group that may
We
do
still
that.
have people in the queue, Councilmember.
I understand. I'm just throwing out the motion that when we get up to that point, that would be my motion, that we ask city administrator to bring back what information you may find out there that would be a consultant, as Ms. Riggs mentioned over there, for either a review, a comparative analysis, and/or a reach out to the community to see what the community wants to have. Thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. So I'm, some very good points have been brought up. And so I'm thinking, probably not too far into the future, if the main issue and the crux of the matter is our unfunded liabilities in CalPERS. So we know that we're looking at approximately 16 million, right, to date. That of course doesn't address if CalPERS, if we were to wipe the slate clean right now, I think we would probably be looking at, I don't know, Ruth, what, 75, 73 million dollars to make it go away. Okay, that was a few years ago. And then, of course, this is my pet project. I always like to bring up the successor bond, which is due in 2030, and we owe approximately 17 million. I believe it was Councilman Pittman that stated, CalPERS in every city is never going to go away. It's just never going to happen. So if CalPERS, and we want to be fiscally responsible, what's the next conversation we're going to have? Is it going to be to revisit a conversation with the sheriff's department, again, to outsource our Oroville Police Department? It's a hypothetical, but it's very serious. At what point? And how do you decide? That is all.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I think just to try to answer, which is a worthy challenge. I think that the fact that we're receiving a fairly significant level of service from CAL FIRE for the northern part of our city, which at any moment, just like I believe in Chico and in other places where they've asked for remuneration for those services, So again, that's the big elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But back to, I think, Councilwoman Chrissy statement was that it's embarrassing. I mean, you know, potentially, I mean, that could, so I think there are some issues there. And then El Medeo, according to what I've heard from them and read, that they're about 50% funded. They're running short, somewhere in that realm. So we have a special fire district that is underfunded, that is going to have to be dealt with. And those services are going to have to be provided. So, and then when you look at some of the other underlying conversations with the CAL FIRE proposal, it's at the top step. It's actually going to come in underneath that. I mean, there's a lot of, in other words, there's just a lot of moving pieces here, which goes back, I think, to, your earlier comment about, you know, procure. I know that Mr. Mayor is a little hesitant about the consultant piece, and but I would think that our city staff, as we move forward with this whole evolution and looking at some of these things, that they're going to need some assistance in unpacking this and also giving the sense of a non-biased look-see at it. Because we all know, you know, the comments that are out there and the opinions of some. So I think that just to have a fair-minded look as we move forward and put this package together, I think that would be an important element. Is it a consultant firm? Do we, you know, I'm not quite sure how that, and that would be more of Mr. Legron's, I think, input on that. What kind of dollars would we be looking at? But again, I think that we have to go in, you know, both wide-eyed open, you know, seeing the whole issue that's before us. But I would just say, I guess, to answer that, and I think I think somebody needs to answer that. That's how I would look at this. I just feel that there are gaps on all levels here that need to be answered. And again, it comes back to how do we get our fiscal responsibilities, you know, and what makes the most sense moving forward. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that perspective. Thank you.
I'd like to answer a little bit of that. We can't move forward with even conversation with El Medeo on that unless we move forward with the letter of intent. So all of that is.
Ooh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Ooh, excuse me, Mayor. That is incorrect. I'm gonna argue with you over that big time. We could have had a separate side deal with El Medeo.
Okay,
a long time.
argue, but I'm going to keep order of this meeting.
You do that.
Yeah, I will. Councilmember Riggs?
Well, it just totally escaped my mind because of that. I recall now. Sorry, thank you. I think that it's also really important to just reiterate that a vote tonight to pursue the contract with CAL FIRE is not a signed, sealed, delivered contract. It's saying that we're going to continue that conversation to get further information about the logistics of what that could look like. So again, it is not a vote that says we're going this direction. For sure. Instead, what it's doing is saying, hey, we do want to continue to look at if this is the best fit for our community, or if continuing with the Oroville Fire Department is the best fit for our community. So I think it's really important to note that, and that for me, my vote tonight is not indicative of what my vote might be when that contract is formally presented.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, and just to that, to back up Councilwoman Riggs' comments there, which I support. I done a deeper dive in some other communities in San Mateo County, San Carlos, 2012. It got so hot, this very issue that we're grappling with today, LAFCO and the county and CAL FIRE and the local and special fire districts, and it got pretty terse, and hence the grand jury. And the grand jury brought forth a conclusion. And for them, for the city of San Carlos, the grand jury's opinion was that the city missed an opportunity to contract with CAL FIRE for them in 2012, with all things considered. And so going back to if I want to pursue this track because I think to not turn over that rock, that we need to do that. We need to pursue, run this thing, run its course. And at the end, if it doesn't make sense for Oroville, then like you've already stated eloquently, we can pull the plug. This is not the last straw here for this topic by any stretch here tonight. But I would not, again, looking at history, looking at other communities, looking at that grand jury's opinion in another community facing like issues, it's like, gosh, I don't want to be in that place looking back thinking, oh, we woulda, shoulda, coulda. If we'd only known this or only known that, or if we'd only slowed down a little bit and taken a little bit more in or brought the temperature down. That was part of it. It got so rancorous, CAL FIRE said, we had enough, if you read through the grand jury report. And I think that we could miss an opportunity. Again, Oroville is not an island. I mean, by any stretch. We have so many agencies, and we're very blessed as a community to have all these agencies here to service us and, watch out for us. And, so I just think that it would be short-sighted just to say, well, we're just going to check the box and move on and not look at this deeper. We owe it to Oroville. We owe it to everyone that lives here to do the deeper dive and see what's there or not.
Are there any more comments from this dais? Looking for a motion to authorize staff to issue the letter of intent.
Mr. Mayor, we have a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll repeat my motion, and thank you for reminding me that I would ask the city staff to find a consultant company or to carry out what Councilman Riggs suggested and what I've suggested, a thorough review of our neighborhoods on the growth plan for the police and fire services to this entire community, not limiting it to the city limits, but more to example areas like Thermalito, South Oroville, East Oroville. And I'm not sure if there's a company that could do that, but it would be good to know that that's available.
I second.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
So is that complete for item number 9?
I believe so.
All right, council announcements, reports.
Do you have impact fee to look at?
Yeah.
Have a
Public hearing.
public hearing, right?
Are we moving into the public hearing?
Yes, sir. Unless you'd like to take a break prior to, if anybody. in the
Yeah, I
dais
need a
needs
few
one.
minutes. Take a 5-minute break.
Carlos, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead and set up your PowerPoint so that you're ready for when they return?
Yes, sure. Let me bring it up here.
Hosting, yeah, okay, perfect.
All right, great.
Thank you, Carlos. We'll let you know when we're ready to get started. They're on a recess.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
We are reconvening at 6:45 PM. Councilmember Riggs, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds. I would like to reconvene to item number 9. So I would make a motion that we continue discussion on item number 9.
I agree with that. Councilmember Goodson, you gonna vote?
Mr. Mayor, can I, just a point of clarification, again, I frequently play the role of sort of parliamentarian. Is this a motion for reconsideration of the item?
Yeah, it doesn't require a
It
vote,
is.
does it?
It does require a vote.
it does?
It requires
Okay.
a motion. When I heard the word motion, it sort of piqued my curiosity. It requires a motion by someone who voted in the affirmative,
Which I did.
and it requires a second and a vote to bring the item back up to reconsider the item that was previously decided. And it must be made at the meeting in which the original decision was made.
Okay. So we have a vote. So the item is
Motion.
reopened. Councilmember Riggs, did you wish to make a motion?
Yes, I do. I would like to include in Councilmember Pittman's motion to also authorize staff to issue a letter of intent for full protection services to CAL FIRE and begin the negotiations for that. So this would include both a letter of intent to CAL FIRE and a comprehensive analysis in order to move forward on both tracks at the same time.
Looking for a second.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
Okay. Moving on to public hearing. This time we're going to open the meeting up for public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. This evening, we are asking the council to hold a public hearing to review and consider the adoption of the development impact fees as specified in the attached report within your agenda packet prepared by Wildan Financial Services. Under the requirements of the California Mitigation Fee Act, the city must prepare a study in which it identifies the specific need for development impact fees and the amount of those fees. This study must be updated every 5 years. The city of Oroville last updated this study in April of 2015. Therefore, in order to continue to collect the development impact fees for new developments, the city must update this study. So staff is recommending to conduct the public hearing and adopt Resolution 8924, a resolution of the Oroville Council adopting the development impact fees. But first, we have a presentation from Carlos Villarreal, our consultant from Wildan Financial Services, for you. I'll hand it off to Carlos.
Great. Thanks, Don. Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy to be here virtually with you all to present the results of our Development Impact Fee Update Study. We were the consultants that initially updated your fees back in 2015, and we were very happy and fortunate to be updating your fees again. So in this study, I will be just going over some Impact Fee 101 so that the Council and other folks in the audience will all be on the same page. I will briefly take a high-level look at the methodology. And then we will get into some of the specifics of your updated fee program. So again, just so that we're all on the same page and everyone knows what we're talking about, what are impact fees? Impact fees are one-time fees charged to new development, typically at the building permit, and they're used to fund the facilities that are needed to serve that development. So our analysis demonstrates that new development will need these facilities and that they will benefit from those facilities. Impact fees are not supposed to be used to fund ongoing operations and maintenance costs, and they're not supposed to be used to fund the share of the facilities that will be serving existing development. So our study demonstrates all of these things. And finally, they're not an ongoing fee that's charged to your existing residents or your existing businesses. So if you already live in Oroville, this is not a fee that you would ever have to pay. In California, it's the Mitigation Fee Act that governs the way impact fees are calculated and implemented. And there's several key findings in that government code that we need to comply with. We need to show that new development creates the need for new facilities, that new development will benefit from the use of the fee revenue that's collected, and that the fees are proportional to new development's share of the planned facility costs. We also need to document the purpose of the fee and how the city intends to use the fee revenue. Next, I'll talk about how we go about updating the impact fee study. So what we do for the 5-year update is completely recalibrate all of the assumptions. So we take a look at estimates of your existing development and your future growth. We can then use those estimates of growth, of development and growth to identify your facility standards, and I'll discuss these a little bit more in a slide later on. Using those facility standards, we can estimate the amount of facilities needed to serve new development and the cost of those facilities, and then we can allocate a share of those costs to accommodate growth. In the case where the facilities will be serving both existing and new development, we can identify the amount needed to fund existing development share of the total costs. And then finally, we can calculate a fee schedule for each unit of new development. So here are the growth projections that we used for this study. The 2020 base year, we got the data for the estimate of current residents and dwelling units from the California Department of Finance. Estimates of employment came from the U.S. Census Bureau. There's this really cool on-the-map application where you can get a count of employment within a geographic area. And then we're looking out all the way out to build out, and the build out figures came from your general plan. Also note for the traffic fee in particular, the traffic fee improvements were designed to serve both the city, but also the sphere of influence and planning areas. So as more areas annex to the city, as the city starts to grow, you can apply that fee that we calculated in those areas as well. And the bottom of the table shows the estimates for the full planning area, if you will. So one methodology that we use to calculate the fees is what we call the existing standard methodology. What we do is we take a look at the facilities that are currently serving your existing demand and use that to create the facility standard. So one way to think about this is, existing park acres per 1,000 residents. So we can calculate your existing facility standard. And then under this methodology, we just asked the new development contribute at that same standard as it occurs. So the ratio of facilities to demand is carried forward and new development contributes at that same rate. The other methodology, and in this case, it's only used for your traffic facilities fee, that's when we can identify a particular amount of facilities needed to serve future demand. In this case, we have a prior traffic facilities list, and we know that new development needs to fund their share of that list. And it's been identified by traffic modeling and engineering. And so we simply divide the cost of all those new facilities by the increase in trips, and that gives us the fee. So new development is funding its identified share of the planned facilities. So what impact fee categories are we looking at in your particular case? We are looking at law enforcement, general government, parks, fire suppression, and storm drain. And we calculate those fees using the existing facility standard that I just described. And then again, the only other fee category that we're including is traffic facilities. And we use that planned facility standard where the cost of the planned facilities drive the fee calculation. So here's a very high level look at the planned facilities included in the study. For traffic facilities, you can see there's a number of intersection improvements and roadway segment widenings, including some bikeway segments. So it's a sort of a complete street approach to traffic facilities. For parks and recreation, the one thing to note about parks and recreation is that under what we call the Quimby Act, Development occurring in a subdivision can be compelled to dedicate land at 3 acres per 1,000 residents, regardless of what your existing standard is. So we don't know exactly how much development will occur in a subdivision, but depending on the amount that occurs in a subdivision based on the growth projected in the city will need to add between 15 and 30 acres of parkland to meet the city's Quimby standard or to maintain the existing standard. For general government facilities, there's been a new courtyard building that's been identified, and the city will also need to identify additional facilities to maintain the standard, your existing facility standard. And the same goes for fire protection, law enforcement, and storm drain facilities. We calculated the existing facility standard for all of those fee categories, and the city and city staff through the annual budget process will identify capacity expanding projects that will be needed to maintain your existing standards and your existing level of service for all of those fee categories. So what will these fees generate through the planning horizon of build out, which is a pretty long time? We have the estimates here. Total project costs across all impact fee categories would be about $348 million. Projected impact fee revenue would be about $202.3 million. And then for the traffic facilities fee, it's the only fee that we use that planned facilities methodology, if you recall. And because of that, we have been able to identify about $145.8 million that is needed to serve existing development in terms of traffic facility projects. So that needs to be funded with any funding source other than the impact fees. So here is a summary of what the fee schedule looks like. It's an update from the prior study. For a single family unit, you're looking at $11,659 per unit. For a multifamily unit, so an apartment, a condo, you'd be looking at $8,319 per multifamily unit. And this next table just shows how it compares to your existing fee schedule. For the residential fee categories, it's an increase of $2,200 to $2,600 per unit. Much of that increase can be attributed to increased density for the multifamily housing. We took a look at how many people are living in each type of multifamily unit, and so proportional to single family, we're seeing more dense occupants per dwelling unit. You will also notice that the traffic fee for all fee categories is going down. The reason it's going down is because we're looking at that build out for the entire sphere of influence. So the project costs are being spread over more potential development. So that's the comparison to your current fee schedule. And then I just wanted to leave you with a few policy options to consider. And these are, obviously up to the city council's discretion. So first is, I just want to make it clear that our study identifies the maximum justified development impact fees under, that comply with the state regulations. And certainly the council could adopt something that's less than the maximum justified amount for policy reasons. So if a fee is too high and it could stifle development, you could always adopt something less than what we show, but you can't adopt anything higher than what we show. For the fee categories that are seeing increases, one popular method to deal with that amongst other jurisdictions in California is to phase in the fee increases so that you don't drop the whole fee increase on the development community all at once. You can, for example, phase them in over 2 or 3 years if that's something that you desire. You also don't have to phase them in. That's just an option I wanted to highlight. And then the third implementation policy option I just wanted to highlight as well is that the city can adjust the fees annually for inflation. And this makes it so that, 5 or more years down the line, when you go to update the fees again, the increase won't be as big because you've been adjusting the fees as you go for inflation as it occurs. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions or hear any comments you have about the study.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Councilmember Smith has a question for you.
Yeah, appreciate the presentation. So I'm not going to hold you to an exact number, but just kind of maybe a 30,000 foot opinion from you as to how competitive we are with our fee structure. As you know, developers, this is a big thing they look at when they come in. They want to make a dollar. I mean, they build to make money at the end of the day, and they provide us with housing or other types of projects to develop the community. So just, again, a 30,000 foot, just an opinion with the fee structures and how they're established, and I'm sure that you provide this service for other communities within our state. But where do we sit? I mean, we pretty competitive? Are we really competitive? I mean, kind of where are we?
Yes. So I know Dawn is taking a look at Chico, and she has the exact figures. I would say, at a statewide high level look, your fees are fairly competitive, but I think a lot of the competition happens on a local level. So, the Chico numbers, I think will provide some context for how you compare locally.
And the numbers for Chico are for a single family residence are approximately $15,760, and that's before the storm drain fee is calculated in, and that storm drain fee is a per acre, per location fee. So Chico's structure is much more complex than our proposed fee structure because Chico's structure also has regions or areas in which the fees fluctuate. And so for the storm drains, they will have, bear with me, Lindo Channel, the Mud Sycamore Creek area, the PV Ditch area, and all those fees fluctuate per acre, per location. So at a very minimum, without storm drain fees, it is already $4,100 higher than what is being proposed this evening for a single-family residence.
Don, do we have any numbers from the county?
I could not locate the specific numbers from the county because their figures are also very complex because they're regional. They're regional based on the Paradise outer areas, the Chico outer areas, so it was kind of convoluted in locating those numbers.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman wishes to speak.
Thank you. Carlos.
Yeah.
Very quickly, and that's happened to be a Ruddy Creek pump station for the sewer sanitation service. That's very undersized to what we've had as far as new development and that services that station. I don't really see sewer collection in the impact fee. Where does that fit, and where does the improvements or the impacts to that come out of what fund?
Yeah, so the sewer collection impact fee was not included in our contract, so we didn't look at that fee in particular. The city can absolutely take a look at that fee and update it. I believe the situation is somewhat complicated due to the sewer district and some other service providers. But like I said, the sewer impact fee was not included in our scope this time around.
Okay, well, I'd like staff to take a look at that particular station because as we sit on the scoreboard, there's a deep concern about its capacity currently, and it's in the middle of a stream where the capacity at one end is higher than the middle of the pipe is. So their pumps are very small and the collection basin is very small. We'll need considerable upgrades. So.
Councilman Pittman, I believe on that we have an agreement that dates back into the early 80s that we will upgrade that station and refurbish it. So I think what I'd like to do is just start focusing our energy on getting that estimate of what that's going to be to fulfill our obligation from.
I just asked the question because I didn't see sewer collection in the impact. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from the dais? We have any questions from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any written communication on this item, and there are no Zoom participants wishing to speak on this item.
All right, well, if that's it, then we're looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8924.
So moved.
Sorry, who was the second?
I was.
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking for one, sorry. Motion carries with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay, with that, we are going to close our public hearings. Move on to council announcements and reports. Any announcements from the council? Moving on to future agenda items. Oh, we got one? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just want to report out that Explore Butte County sponsored our museum weekend, and I think it was a very good success. It was just a good opportunity to partner with that agency. Additionally, they have a hike Butte County. They've developed this thing where you can win stuff, which is pretty cool. So we have 30-plus hikes here in our local area, and I just want to encourage you all to get out. I did the one this weekend. I hiked from the park, Riverbend Park, up to the Green Bridge. It's just short of 4 miles. And I was looking for a portaloo. I tell you, at my age, we need one of them. So anyway, I'm looking forward to having facilities, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, that's a definite need as you mature in life, right? But it's just a beautiful walk. And I also just want to shout out to OPD because I saw no encampments. There were some areas that probably needed a little pick me up, but the river walk was beautiful. And then in addition to that, what a great view down at the park, because it was just packed with people, families, barbecues. I mean, almost every parking stall at Riverbend Park was being used, and the people were using the trails, and it was just a great thing to see. So I just want to give a shout out, OPD. Thank you for all the hard work you do. And I can't wait to have a bathroom on the trail. Thank you.
Councilmember Riggs.
Yeah, one of the committees that I'm assigned to is a Downtown Oroville Business Association, and I just want to make the council aware that currently the business administration is conducting a community needs assessment, looking at the current business types and needed business types in order to make a thriving downtown, and then creating a study based on other thriving communities to best identify how we can move our downtown district forward, especially as our community continues to grow and needs continue to grow. So you could find that on the Downtown Oroville Facebook page. As of this afternoon, there was already 380 responses, and in order to get a valid sample size, we needed 383. So we are well ahead of schedule than what we expected, which is really encouraging. And the feedback has also been very interesting about what people would really like to see in our community. And then also I just wanted to, since Councilmember Smith brought up hiking, we did receive an email today regarding somebody who went for a hike along Ophir about some inappropriate graffiti, and so I just wanted to make sure that got to staff's attention in order to address.
We will forward that to the proper agency. I'm not necessarily sure that's in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Future agenda items. Councilmember Riggs.
I would like to see a Oroville Police Department growth plan in order to account for the needs of the police department and public safety for our community, including possible annexation of Thermalito. I just want to keep you really busy.
Anyone else? Administration reports. Mr. LeGrone.
I just have one thing to report back to the council quickly. We did receive our award announcement today from CDBG regarding the COVID-1 dollars, which was the dollars that are allocated to the Hope Center. So we did get the award letter today, but we will be getting the standard agreement shortly and get that taken care of for you.
Thank you. Chief Deal.
While we're talking about money, We also had an insurance payment for the vehicle that went through the front lobby of the police department, a little over $50,000 that we got back from that. So that's going to get added to the fund that we're going to be spending to replace some of the stuff over there. So as it's already been stated a couple of times tonight about different information that's out there that we all have to be subject to, unfortunately, there's been some misinformation about the police department that's out there as well, and I'm going to take just a couple minutes to clear some of that up. And it's going to be around the topic of vacancies and recruitment. In the last, I'd say probably 4 months, we've recruited for every single position that the public safety department has, every single one of them. That's firefighter, that's police officer, entry-level police officer, lateral police officer, municipal law enforcement, dispatch. We've done it all. We've recruited for everything. And just to go through those vacancies and those by position, I'll first talk about the fire department vacancies. There's two current vacancies. We have about 8 to 10 applications that are sitting on Chief Tenz's desk right now that are in the process of evaluating. Just because somebody applies doesn't mean that we fill the position. So there's a process that we've already started. Regardless of what goes on with item number 9 tonight, we're still moving forward with that. The second one, dispatch. We had 4 vacancies. We flew the position. We had a number of applicants. A number of them were not successful in the process. We hired 2. So there were 4 vacancies. We hired 2. I've got 1 more. I just don't have enough people to train them. I can only train so many in the dispatch center. That's a dispatch center of 9. And there's 5 there right now, 2 trainees. It's a little much. When those 2 trainees get through, I've got somebody waiting to come into the next position, and then we'll have 1. But 2 of those positions are funded by Oroville, by the fire department. So a little bit of limbo there with what's going on. Still going to move forward. Police officer. Seems to be the hotbed topic. There's 22 funded positions there. 15 of them are currently filled. That leaves 7 vacancies. When you hear 7 vacancies, we're not bleeding overtime money in the police department. No positions for police officers are creating overtime right now. None. Part of that is because I took the POP team employees and put them in those vacancies. It's something I had to do. So of those 7 vacancies, one of them, I don't want to say froze it because that's an improper term. I kind of just held it so the monies from that could be spent on some ongoing personnel issues, if you will. That leaves 6. I've got 1 in the police academy due to graduate in May. He'd fill one of those. I've got 1 in a background process. That'd fill one of those. That leaves 4 that have never been filled in the last several years. I don't want to say never, but it's positions that we had added to the budget when we came in here and talked about the POP team. So the perception that there's all these vacancies and nothing's being done is absolutely false. The last one I want to talk about is municipal law enforcement officer position. There's 9 funded. There's 5 currently filled. That leaves 4 vacancies. I'm interviewing 7 applicants the day after tomorrow. Of those 7, we hope to fill some of those positions. Got to go through a background process and get them in there. Everything's being done there that we can. Unfortunately, in the times we're in, it's hard to find law enforcement officers that can make it through the entire process. Right now, police officer position is currently posted on the City of Oroville website, and if there's any applicants that are interested, they can certainly go there and apply, and we'll take them through the process that we need to do on that. On the MLE interviews, I actually reached out to Councilmember Riggs, mentioned the Downtown Business Association. The president of that association is going to sit on the interview panel, so we can have some sort of community input this go around on our application process. The last thing is the POP team. That process that we set up on the overtime basis is working very well. It never has a problem filling. People are jumping at the opportunity to do that. And the POP team is working. A lot of their work is in conjunction with the code enforcement team that's doing a lot of your cleanups that we've been talking about. Some of the graffiti, some of the encampments that are gone. A lot of credit really needs to go to the City Works program. Those are the individuals that are doing a bulk of that work. And that program's being very successful in my opinion. If there's no other questions on any of that stuff, then that's all I've got. Thank you.
Dawn with a W.
Just a quick update on the municipal services review. We are just waiting on one last chapter. And so once we received, it's for the finance chapter. Once we receive that, then that will come to this body for review and then ultimately to LAFCO. And also staff's been working on the statewide parks grant application. We have conducted numerous community outreach meetings, received feedback from the community. So I just wanted to provide you with the final master plan that's been developed out of those meetings for Hewitt Park. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. In color too, huh?
So again, this is all from suggestions from the community. We have committed community or park ambassadors. Pickleball team has expressed interest in volunteering for the Adopt a Park. So we have a lot, Councilmember Riggs has been intimately involved because her spouse and her use this park frequently. So it's been a great effort. Likewise with the Bedrock Park and Brad Freeman Trail expansion or enhancements, that has also been a great community effort. So we're hoping to receive the award for these grant funds and we can make these enhancements to our park as they're needed. Thank you.
Leo?
Cool.
With an L?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Just quickly, just want to say thank you for passing the development impact fees tonight. It really goes to make sure that new development pays its fair share in keeping up with the growth of the infrastructure of the city. So it's a critical thing to make sure that they're paying their fair share. Additionally, wanted to say that that the Facebook posts and things that are going on are really making a difference out there. I'm in quite a few different areas, and the other local municipalities are talking about all the stuff that's going on here in Oroville. So it's pretty exciting, and you're starting to dictate the story about you as opposed to having people keep it up to their own imagination. So that's a really positive thing that's going on right now. That's about all I had for you tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Lando?
Just wanted to indicate that Mark Mendez is asked to speak to council at your next meeting about uses for the Gateway property.
Okay.
Great. Ruth?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to let you know that the city administrator is having us do departmental reports again. You will be receiving this in the next city council. We have 2+ pages, so I won't bore you tonight, but I just want you to know you'll be updated at the next council on what we're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Huber?
Nothing. Thank you, sir.
Nothing? Okay. Well, with that, we are going to adjourn, to March 16th, 2021 at 4 p.m.